Hey DIYers, today we're testing out 4 different metal cutting blades. Now we're not just testing do they cut the materials, no. What I want to know is do I need all 4 of these blades to cut a variety of materials for the projects I may have to do? Or can I get by with just one blade and get a good quality cut and not have to have the expense of having 4 different blades? Now the 4 blades we're going to be testing is this mild steel blade here, which came with this saw, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to be testing out an aluminum blade, thin steel blade, then finally we're testing out a combination blade that's wood and metal. Now we're going to be testing these blades on a variety of different materials. We're going to be testing them out on wood, obviously. I've got this block with nails and screws in it. We're going to test each one of them on that. I've got aluminum for each one of them. I've got thinner steel. I've got thicker steel. I've got rebar. And we're going to try all of them out on this. We may ruin these blades when we're done. Then we'll know, yes, you got to have multiple blades, or maybe we don't. We're also going to be testing on this galvanized material, some stainless steel, and some thick bar material. Now for each blade itself, for what it's designed for, I'm going to test it a little heavier, meaning like this mild steel blade, I'm going to test it on some thick bar stock, some thicker walled tubing here, some solid bar, and that sort of stuff to see how it does. And then at the end, we're going to tally all the results up and see what we come up with. Now, full disclosure, Evolution Tools sent me these 3 blades to try out, and I want to apologize to Evolution Tools because they gave me these blades 6, 8, 9 months ago, and unfortunately, I'm just now getting around to doing this video. The saw we're going to be using is Evolution's S355 MCS dual cutting miter chop saw. Yes, dual miter. And they gave me this saw for a review video. And if you want to see that video, I'll have a link at the end of this video and down in the description, and you can go watch that. But I will say, this is a very, very, very good saw. I've used this thing way more than I thought I ever would, and I really appreciate that Evolution reached out to me to actually do this. It's been a game changer for me. And with this saw comes this mild steel blade. Now I want to make a disclaimer here, as I've used this blade here that comes with the saw quite a bit. I used it for this video that I made on this saw. I've used it to cut aluminum on several projects. I've used it to cut rebar. So it's not a brand new blade like these. So I'm going to give just a little bit of leeway on this blade here when we do the judging. But so far it's held up very nicely. Now all the blades I'm testing are going to be 14-inch blades with a 1-inch arbor. And I'll have an affiliate link down in the description for you to go check out and see all the different blades they make. They make other metal blades. They make a stainless steel blade, but I didn't test that one. Now, before we get into cutting the materials with each of these blades, let me give you kind of some commonalities of each one of these blades we're testing. They do make smaller blades all the way down to 5 3/8, and as big as 15-inch. All blades 8 1/4 and bigger have a 1-inch arbor hole in them. 8 inches and smaller have different size arbors. So you have to go on the website and see what blade has what size hole. All blades are carbide tipped, which is really nice. Now what I don't know is, can you resharpen these? So if you have a person you send your blades to that sharpens, say, your woodworking blades, let them look at these and see if they can be resharpened. I don't know if there's enough carbide on these to be resharpened or not. There's no instructions on them for resharpening. And I say that because I've got some higher end wood cutting blades that actually have the pitch and the angle stamped into the blade as to what you resharpen them at. So, I mean, it would be nice if you could resharpen these at least once, because, I mean, they're not a cheap blade. You know, so far this one's lasted pretty well for what I've done. So it may very well be that these just last for an extra long time, and then when you're done, you're done. Now, because they are carbide tipped, they're going to be considered cold cutting blades. What that means is when I'm done cutting the material, I can grab a hold of it and not burn myself. Now, I will say on some of these really thick materials, it does get a little warm, and you probably ought to let it set a few minutes. But if any of you have ever used those abrasive blades, you know, the ones that shoot sparks and can set a fire, those you very well know when you get done cutting, you can't grab a hold of them. You either got to dunk them in some water or let them set for a minute, and you better well have some gloves on when you grab a hold of it, or you'll get burnt. And I can contest to the metals I've cut so far with this blade, that holds up pretty true. Like I say, some of the really thick stuff gets a little warm, but it cools off fairly quick and it doesn't slow you down. Now, as I've alluded to earlier, all 4 blades we're testing on materials they're not designed for. That's the whole purpose of this video. Now, what we're going to be judging these blades on are Can it cut the materials? Not only can it cut the materials it's designed for, but can it cut the materials it's not designed for. We're going to judge how well does it cut the material. Does it cut it very fast or very slow? Especially the materials it's designed for. Does an aluminum blade cut the aluminum really quick, or is it kind of slow? We're going to test how clean the cut is. So does an aluminum blade cut aluminum very nicely, but does a crappy job on stainless steel? We're going to test each one of those on that. And for each of those categories, we're going to assign a number grade of 1 to 5. 1 crappy, 5 great. At the end, we'll tally up the results and see what we get. Now, my goal for this video is more geared towards the DIYer like me, who today needs to cut some wood that's got metal in it, but tomorrow you got a project and you need to cut a little bit of aluminum. You know, you might need to cut some rebar or some thin steel. Can that person get by with one blade, or do you need a couple different blades? This isn't going to be geared towards a professional who does a lot of metal cutting, metal work, welding, who cuts different size metals. For people like that, I'm going to say yes, you're going to need a blade for each one of your materials, or you're just going to burn these up, I assume. So that's what this is geared for. So keep that in mind as we go through this test. So the first blade we're going to be testing is going to be this mild steel blade that came with the saw. Now, as I've already mentioned, it's a 14-inch blade with a 1-inch arbor. Comes with 66 teeth, and all of them are carbide tipped. Kerf on this is 3/32 or 0.094 inches, meaning when you cut your material, 3/32 of it is going to be gone. This blade is designed for mild steel and ferrous metals. Now you're saying, what? Ferrous metals, metallic metals, things that can be magnetic. What is mild steel? I mean, I asked that question. To me, steel is steel. But as I got to checking, no, there's a wide variety of steel. So the definition of mild steel is that it's a ferrous metal that's made up of iron and carbon. It's higher in iron than it is carbon. And because of that, it's not as brittle as regular steel. Now, what's regular steel? I don't really know the answer to that one. And because of that, it's not as easily corrode or rust like regular steel. I didn't say it doesn't rust or corrode. It said it's not as easily as regular steel. Now, this blade here at the time of the video cost $89. So you can see you're gonna have 90 bucks in a blade. So it would be nice if it'd last a little while. It'd be nicer, like I say, if you could resharpen it. But I can tell you, so far this one's lasted pretty well for what I've used it for. Let me get this blade put in here and we'll get set up and get to cutting. So the first thing I got set up in here is a 4-inch piece of square tubing that's 3/8 of an inch thick. And as a little side note, this mild steel, the aluminum, and the thin steel blade all have arrows on them, and there's an arrow on the saw so you can match up which direction they go. And the other thing I'm using, which this is an ingenious idea, I got this from Evolution Tools and I bought this. This is a sliding magnet. Chip collection on this is really not very good, so metal chips go everywhere. So with steel that's magnetic, set this right here on the saw and it catches a lot of the metal. And so then I can just take it over the trash can, slide this out, and metal falls off. Ingenious idea. This is worth going to the website and getting by itself. So I got my safety glasses, I got gloves, I got this clamped in here real tight so it doesn't move. I don't typically do this with my wood cutting saw, but with this metal cutting saw, I do wait for it to stop before I pull it up because it can grab and kick some stuff. Just ask me how I know. So you see that cut through, I didn't say it didn't have any sparks, but it cut through pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good chunk of steel to cut through, and cut through fairly easily. And you can see we've got a little burr here. Not much. I can tell you when this blade was brand new, it didn't do that. It looks like a fairly clean cut. And this is some pretty thick steel. Let's cut this solid 1-inch piece of metal. Now I know it's a little dangerous cutting a small piece like that, but this is all I've got. Cut a fairly clean cut through a 1-inch piece of steel. So the mild steel blade can definitely cut bigger than what it's probably designed for. Rebar is a really hard metal to me, or at least that's the way it feels when this is cutting it. So let me cut this piece of rebar and show you how well it cuts that. And then we'll move on to the aluminum and the other stuff. And this is 3/8 inch rebar. Has a little burr on there, but that's not a big deal. Actually pretty common with the rebar. So it cuts that very well. All right, next is this 1/8 inch thick piece of 1.5 inch square tubing of aluminum. Clean wise, not too clean. It was a little bit cleaner when it's a brand new blade, but all in all, not bad. And it definitely cut through it pretty easily. Next, we'll be doing a 16th inch thick, 3/4 inch round stock of stainless steel. Now, I'm not cutting much off of each one of these pieces. One, because I don't want to waste a lot. And two, not that I've got any welding techniques, but in case I want to use these materials, I don't want to waste it all, because stainless steel ain't cheap to buy, even as scrap. Cut through that pretty easily. Clean wise, it's okay. A little filing and clean it up. Not as good as I'd like. Next will be this 1/4 inch thick chunk of galvanized angle iron. It's a 3x3. It cut through it. I'd say at first it struggled just a little bit, but once it kind of got down into the meat of it, it wasn't too bad. But it went through it and actually did a cleaner job than what the stainless steel was. So next I'm gonna do this solid block of 4x4 wood. I'm not gonna do the wood with the screws and nails in it, because honestly, I don't even think it's gonna cut through this wood. So if it won't cut through this, it ain't gonna cut through that. And one other thing, before anybody goes getting crazy in the comments, I know I may not be setting these metal pieces up correctly all the time in this saw. Like angle iron should be done like this and not like that. You may see me do some that way. Square tubing should be done like this, not the way I did it, and that sort of stuff. I understand that. Alrighty, let's set up for this block of wood and see if it even cuts it. I have my doubts. Wow, I honestly am shocked. It's actually a pretty clean cut. Didn't burn it. It smelled like it was burning it. I'm shocked. I honestly didn't think it'd cut worth a lick. I thought it would just grind through and make a horrible mess, but it actually didn't do too bad. So with that, I'm gonna set up and cut the one that has the metal in it. Now, as far as what I have in this block of wood, I've got some number 8 nails, 4-inch exterior, they're number 10 screws. This is a number 9 GRK. This here is a 1/4 inch GRK screw, structural screw. As you see, it cut through it, and you can tell when it hit the nails if it spark. Went right through them pretty easily. Don't seem to have any issues. All right, now it's time to test out this aluminum blade. Again, 14 inch, 1 inch arbor. This has a 3/32 or a .094 kerf, just like the mild steel blade does. This happens to have 90 teeth, whereas this had 66. And this is specifically designed for aluminum in that because of the teeth, it doesn't clog up when you use it. Now, I have witnessed that with this mild steel blade. If I've cut quite a bit of aluminum, I will see that there's some aluminum chips clog up in a little groove between the blades. And at the making of this video, the cost of this blade is 118 bucks. So let me get this swapped out for that one and we'll get started. So we're first gonna be testing this blade out on what it's used for, and that's aluminum. So I've got 1.5 by 1/8 inch thick round aluminum here. I've got some 3/4 thick by 4 inch wide aluminum plate here. And I got another piece, a 3/4 inch, just thin leftover piece that I've got. I believe I'm gonna cut the rebar last, because to me, the rebar seems the hardest. It's gonna ruin the blade. I'd rather it ruin it on the rebar, the last thing, versus the first thing. Now, one thing I'm gonna do with the other 3 blades that I didn't do with that mild steel blade is when we're all done cutting through this stuff, provided the blade's still good, I'm gonna go back and make another test cut in some aluminum, kind of see how much did it tear the bit up, or is the bit still pretty good. So first, let's set up for this aluminum pipe here. Now, I will tell you, that went through that like butter, slick as butter. Got this little burr right here. I'm sure it's because it's a brand new blade, but I still feel that went through the aluminum faster and smoother than the mild steel blade did. So let's do this piece here, and then we'll do that thick plate steel. And I know my magnet doesn't work on the aluminum. I'll have to come back around and sweep it up. Set up for the plate steel. And I've got little white dots on this end here, so I know that's not the cut edge. Again, that went through very easily. It was a little slower, yeah, because of how thick it was and how wide, but it went through very easily. So to kind of speed things up, here's how the order of things are gonna go when I cut. I'm gonna cut stainless steel next. I think that's gonna be the softest of everything. The next, it'll be this 1/2 inch square bar that's a 1/16 inch thick. The next will be this 1/8 inch bar that's 1 inch thick. Then we'll do this solid bar, which is going to be a 1/2 inch thick. Then we'll do this galvanized, this 1/4 inch galvanized angle iron. Then we'll do wood with the nails in it. And last, we'll do the rebar. Hopefully it makes it through the rebar. Then we'll come back if the blade's still good and we'll cut another piece off of this round tubular aluminum here that's an 1/8 inch thick. Cut smooth as butter through that, just like the aluminum. And cut really smooth, thin steel. Again, like butter. Honestly, I'm really surprised. And a very clean cut at that. Mild steel, 1/8 inch thick. Easily cuts through it. And again, a nice clean cut, smooth. Got a little burr there. 1/2 inch thick bar steel. Very easy, and I'm putting very little pressure on this saw to cut through this material. I'm not having to push hard at all. It is going through surprisingly very easy. And again, a very clean cut. Yes, we got this little burr here, but it's still a very clean cut. I'm quite impressed. Next, galvanized. Very easily cuts through this. I mean, I am quite impressed. Because of what we've done so far, I don't see any problem with it going through that rebar. And to me, a very clean cut. Next will be the wood with the nails and screws and all that in it. There's just no stopping this blade. Very nice cut. This is that big GRK 1/4 inch screw right there and right there. And there's the smaller one right there. No issues whatsoever. I mean, that thing cut through as good as a wood blade. And lastly, the rebar. Again, very easy. And honestly, I have to say this is easier than when the mild steel blade that I have was brand new. I don't remember it cutting this well or cutting this clean. I mean, look at those edges. Yeah, you got this burr here, but look at the rest of those edges. And now to do a recut of the aluminum to see how good it is compared to the first time. No trouble whatsoever. And again, got this little burr. A rundown on this aluminum blade. I am very impressed. I honestly didn't think it would do this well. And honestly, I'm trying to think back when I got this saw brand new and used just a mild steel blade. I almost have to say it didn't cut as well as this. It cut good, but I don't think it cut as well. And the question is it because this has 80 teeth versus the 66 teeth? I don't know. I have high hopes for the others because of that. Now I know, don't get me wrong, I know if you did this time and time and time again, this blade's gonna get dull and not do as well. But all blades are gonna do that. But out of the package, grade A. All right, now for the thin steel blade, same thing, 14 inch, 1 inch arbor, solid carbide teeth, just like everything else, but this one has 90 teeth, the most of all the blades we're gonna test. And this thin steel blade is designed to cut steel 1/8 inch or thinner. And at the filming of this video, cost 145 bucks. So you see these blades get expensive. I got 4 pieces of qualified thin steel here, meaning they're all less than 1/8 inch thick. So I got a 16th inch, 1/2 inch tubular steel. I got this 1/8 inch, 1.25 inch angle iron. I got this 16th inch, 1.5 inch tubular steel. This 1/8 inch by 1 inch tubular steel. So we'll test the blade out on those, then we'll move up to a solid bar. First up, 16th inch thick, 1/2 inch square tubular steel. Wow. That went through faster than the aluminum. Wow. I've got dots on this end to mark that that's not the cut end. Little burr right there. Next up, 16th inch, 1.5 inch tubular steel. Wow. I'm gonna have to tell you, this is amazing. That thing is cutting like butter. Burr on this one's a little curled up. Very, very clean. Actually, I have to remeasure, and this is 3/32 angle iron. And I'm not putting hardly any pressure. I'm putting just enough pressure to push down the motor, is all. I'm not forcing it through this at one bit. Slight little burr right there. Very, very clean. 1/8" square tubing. As easy as this is going through, I have no doubt it's going to do well through all the other materials. Cut-ins. A little burr right there. Alrighty, 1/2" thick solid bar steel. Like it wasn't even there. And the other thing I've noticed, there's not a lot of sparks either. Got this little burr here. Okay, tubular aluminum should be zero challenge for this blade by what it's done so far. It's a close call to say whether it cut through this easier than the aluminum blade did. Very close call. Cut in. Again, a little burr right there. 3/4 bar aluminum. Got a little paint on there. Next up, stainless steel. Again, went through it very well, very smooth, but a pretty clean cut. Next up, galvanized. And again, went through very nicely. Remember, this is like 1/4" galvanized steel for a thin steel blade. Very little burring compared to what the others did. And a clean cut. Next up, 1/2" bar steel. It might have seemed a little slower on that because I was actually holding back on the saw, not letting it go as fast. But again, a very nice cut. No burr. Very clean. Next up, 3/8 rebar. A little worried about this. A few more sparks on that one, but again, went through very nicely. I can't say how impressed I am. Very little burring. Very little, very nice. And lastly, wood with nails and screws. You can see when it hit metal because it sparked a little, but honestly didn't really have any trouble. Pretty clean for wood. Nails and screws, pretty clean. And lastly, this is a recut of that 1/16" square tubular steel just to see how well it goes back through it again. And I think it went through just as slick as it did the first time. Still a great clean cut. I hope it's coming through on the camera just how good these blades are doing, because I honestly am quite impressed. I really thought I was going to be ruining every one of these blades with the materials I'm using, but they're holding up well and cutting through them very nicely. I couldn't complain. At this point, they're definitely worth the price. All right, so the fourth and last blade we're going to test is this multi-purpose blade, or they call it a multi-material blade. Specs on this, again, 14 inches, 1" arbor. Kerf on this is narrower. It's only 11 1/28 or 0.086 inches. This has the least number of teeth. It's only got 36. As you can see, not every tooth is carbide tipped. And I'm guessing that's because the other ones are made more for the wood, whereas the carbides are made more for the metal. Now this blade's made to cut through steel, aluminum, plastic, PVC, composites, and wood. It says metal up to 1/4" thick. We're going to give that a test. And I have, of all the blades, this is the one I have my worries about because it's a multifunctional wood and steel blade as far as getting through these materials. But we'll see how it goes. And this blade here comes in at the lowest price at 86 bucks, which is still a fair chunk of change for a blade. So first I'm going to cut through a couple different pieces of wood. This here is an old 4x4 post. We'll cut through it with no nails or anything in it. Then I'm going to cut through a piece of pressure treated lumber and just kind of see how it does. Wow, I didn't even know it was cutting into the wood before I looked. And there happened to be one little nail there. It went through like butter. I didn't even know there was a nail there. Let's cut this pressure treated. Again, wow. All right, now let's cut through a piece with the jillion nails and screws in it. Kind of running out of nails and stuff. I'm not cutting through as much, but it did nicely. Now I will say I could tell when it hit the metal, and you could too through the sound. When it got to some of the thicker stuff, that it did kind of hesitate just a little bit and didn't go through quite as smooth as all the other blades did. But when it comes to the wood part of it, it goes through slick as snot. But it does, I don't want to say it gets hung up, but you can tell you're cutting through some nails or screws, at least when it's a whole bunch like this. Now, when it went through this one, I didn't even know that it hit one. We'll see how it does on the rest of this stuff. I'm a little nervous, I'll have to tell you. All right, I've kind of got these set up in order of difficulty. So we're gonna start with aluminum, and this thin steel here, a little thicker steel, this bar steel, stainless steel, rebar, and galvanized last. First up, this square tubing of aluminum. I would say probably not as well as the metal designed blades, but very, very close. Again, still looks pretty clean, just a few burrs. Next, bar aluminum. Now on that, it went through pretty good. I would say a little better than the square tubing, but it's a very, 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 very close second to the other blades. Very little burring, nice and clean. Next, thin square tubing. I would say it went through very nicely. Very clean, very clean. Next will be this 1/8 inch thick square tubing that's 3/4 of an inch wide. So far, I have to say I'm kind of impressed. Cut side with that little piece of burr there. You can see it's still a pretty clean cut. Next will be this 1/2 inch thick piece of bar steel. Few sparks. The metal cutting blade's probably just a touch better, but it went through well. Very little burring, clean, really clean cut. Next will be the stainless steel. I'm a little apprehensive about this blade, so I'm kind of holding back and not letting it just go through like I did with the other materials. But throwing that aside, it went through well. Cut side has a little burr, but all in all, a clean cut. Next will be the rebar. It went through really well. It's got just a teeny little burr on it. Non-cut edge, as you can tell. Clean cut. All right, next what I'll call the Mac Daddy, this 1/4 inch piece of galvanized. I'm a little nervous. While it went through it, it was a little slower than the others. It was noticeably slower. Remember, it's really not designed to go through this galvanized. Went through nicely, a few little burrs, not much. All in all, I think it's a pretty clean cut. And lastly, a recut of the wood with all the nails and screws in. And I would say it cut through just the same. Just for giggles, let's just cut the plain wood and see what it does. So that last piece I cut with just wood only, maybe I could tell just a little hesitation. Not as unknown clean a cut through as it did the very first time. So cutting these materials, I think, did do a little bit of damage to it. But it still went through it fast, easy. But I could just tell a hair bit of difference going through it a second time. But I'll have to say, all in all these blades have impressed me. I'm really shocked they went through all these materials. Honestly, I thought I was going to break every one of these blades except the mild steel blade. I don't know why I should be surprised that they went through wood, but I am surprised that the aluminum blade did all that it did. The thin steel blade went through everything, and this multi-purpose blade went through all the same stuff. Hats off to Evolution in these blades. I'm impressed. Now, hopefully that came through on the camera and you can see how well these blades did. So let's run down with the results and see what we can do as far as, can we get away with just one blade? So as far as how they scored, let's go with the mild steel blade. First category was, did it cut the design material it was made for? Yes. How well did it cut through the material it was designed for? I put a 5 on this. It's had a lot more use than these other blades, so I gave it just a little bit of mercy there on that. Next, how clean did it cut through the steel that it was intended for? I put it as a 4. I think it could have been a little cleaner, but I'm going to tell you, it's hard for me to determine back when it was brand new. Even though I gave it a little forgiveness, that could probably be a 4+. And then as far as how does it do through each of the materials, for wood, cut through wood only, I gave that a 5. Cut through wood only with the metal in it, I gave that a 4. Mild steel, yes, I gave that a 4. Thin steel, I gave that a yes, I gave that a 4. And on the mild steel, on the rebar, I gave that a yes, and I gave that a 4+. Aluminum, I gave that a yes, but I graded it a 3. Galvanized, I gave it a yes, and I also gave it a 3. And stainless steel, I gave it a yes, but I gave it a 2. Again, brand new blade, it might grade these up 1 more, but I think these other blades did better than it did on these materials. And then on how good did it recut the material it's designed for, I gave it a 5. Now, for the aluminum blade, did it cut the material it's designed for? Yes. How well did it cut the material it's designed for? I gave it a 5. How clean is the cut that it's designed for? I gave that a 5. As far as the different materials, did it cut through the wood? I gave that a yes with a 5. Did it cut through the wood with all the nails and screws in it? I gave it a yes and a 5 also. Mild steel, gave that a yes with a 5. Rebar, I put that in with the mild steel, gave it a yes with also a 5. Thin steel, yes with a 5. Galvanized, cut through the galvanized, gave it a 5. Stainless steel, yes with a 5. Then how good was the recut of aluminum? I gave it a 5 also. Thin steel blade, did it cut through the material it's designed for? Yes, it did. How well did it cut through? I gave it a 5. How clean was the cut? I gave that a 5. How well did it cut through wood? And how well did it cut through the wood with the screws and nails in it? It did it, and I gave it a 5 also. Mild steel, cut through it, gave it a 5. Rebar, cut through it also, and gave it a 5. Galvanized, cut through the galvanized, gave it a 5. Aluminum, cut through it and gave it a 5. The same for stainless steel, it cut through it and gave it a 5. Now how well did it recut through some thin steel? I gave that a 5 also. Now for the combo blade, does it cut the material it's designed for? Most definitely. Wood by itself cuts it beautifully. How well did it cut through the material it's designed for? I gave it a 4 plus 5 minus, just because when it hits them bigger screws and that, it kind of hangs up. But remember, I'm cutting through about 8 or 10 of these versus just one. Now the one piece that I cut through and hit just one nail, I had no idea I hit it. So honestly, let's just say that's a 5 minus. How clean is the cut through it? I put that as a 5. The different materials now. Mild steel, I gave it a, yes, it cut through it, but I gave it a 4 plus. And the same with the rebar. Yes, it cut through it, but I gave it a 4 plus. Thin steel, again, yes, with a 4 plus. Galvanized, yes, with a 4. Aluminum, yes, with a 5. And stainless steel, a yes with a 5 also. And how well does it cut back through the material it's designed for? I gave it a 5 minus only because I could tell just a fraction of a little bit less smoothness going through that wood. Now I realized to make this a really good fair test, I probably should have had a brand new mild steel blade. I didn't, and so I am trying to be subjective of that and give it a little bit of leeway. But to answer the big question of this video, can you get by with one blade? And I'm going to say yes, but. So if mainly you do wood, and every once in a while you're going to hit a nail or a screw, buy the combo blade and move on and be done and you're good. I think yes, most definitely. If you're going to be cutting other steel more and wood occasionally, I would say step up to one of the other 3 blades. And it's going to depend on if you're more of an aluminum person, get the aluminum blade. If you're more of a steel person, thin steel or the mild steel. If you had all 4 of these blades and you only had one to choose and you're going to cut a variety of materials like I did here, which one would you choose? It's tough. It's between the aluminum and the thin steel blade because how smooth and how good they cut. Had a gun to my head, I'm gonna go with the aluminum blade. Yes, it is possible to get away with one blade and to do multiple projects and materials. Again, as I said the first of the video, if all you do is metal, every once in a blue moon you do some wood, then your job is going to be to have a blade for each type of material because you're doing too much of each material to use one and it lasts, especially at the expense of these. And like I say, I don't know if these are resharpenable. If anybody's gotten one of these and had it resharpened, please let us know in the comments that yes, you can or no, you can't. And if you got nothing else from this video, go pick you up one of these sliding magnets. This is a game changer when it comes to dealing with metal shavings. Now, if you want to know more about this saw and how well it does and everything, there's a link right here. You can go watch the review I did on it. If you want to see some videos where I actually use this saw to cut some metal and stuff, a playlist right here, you can go watch and see those videos. But until next time, happy DIYing.